All right, everyone, welcome back to another video. Welcome to Chris. So, if you haven't watched our first interview, that was done a few months ago after Chris became the second fastest age group Ironman of all time. Now, fast forward about a month ago, Chris won Ironman Italy. He's now a professional triathlete. He's an Aussie that's now living in London, but we don't hold that against him. And Chris and I actually we kind of connected almost 2 years ago because of this channel. We met briefly in Roth in 2023, and yeah. Anyway, Chris is a fascinating man with. He's extremely wise, and he's keen to share some of that knowledge. And I feel like for me, particularly as a young triathlete, like I'm maybe a bit brash and a bit emotional. And Chris is just, as you'll hear, such a wise head and someone that is going to go far in this sport. So this is pretty much just me wanting to record a chat with Chris because I want to pick his brain on what he's been up to and how I can follow in his footsteps. So we will kick it off. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks, mate. That's another great intro. I hope your followers aren't too sick of my voice. And yeah, as much as I'm wise, I still feel like I'm probably 24 years old, even though I'm in a 32-year-old body. So,
Yes. Well, let's just dive in. So, Chris won Ironman Italy. What? How long ago was that? Was it what, like a month, 6 weeks?
6 weeks.
Yep, 6 weeks ago. And now you're officially a professional triathlete. So I just wanted to kick off this interview because I know that myself being an age grouper still, just a lowly old age grouper, and all the other age groupers out there that might watch this and are on that journey to wanting to be a pro triathlete. What was it like? Why did you choose to do it now? And what actually was the application process like?
Yeah, I think it's been something in the back of my mind, even when we first talked. I think I've always longed to make the jump up. It was just whenever I felt ready to make that jump. And I think after Ironman Italy, after getting the win, I thought it's a good time too. I'm realistic in all of this and know, I'm still on the journey of progress and it might take me another, 3, 5, 10 years to get towards the front end, but I'm willing to give it that amount of time and take the long term approach. So I think in the back of my mind, I felt as though I just needed to put together a string of good performances to warrant myself feeling like I'm ready to jump on up. And after both Hamburg this year and Italy, and seeing some great progress in my training, I thought it's the time to do it for next year and start to mix it up there. Yeah, so the whole process for being an Australian triathlete is a couple of options in terms of long distance tri. I think one of them is there's a couple of races. I think Ironman Cairns potentially, where you come within the top of the amateur field. I think there's also automatic qualification. So within certain races, you win overall, and then within a certain amount of time. And then there's also a discretionary field. So this year for me, without not on purpose, but the two races that I chose to do, Hamburg and Italy, both didn't have a professional men's field. And it was just purely, I booked them well in advance because all these amateur races end up booking out, 9 months in advance. So I ended up booking them, and obviously with my results, I was able to take them to Tri Oz, plus my results over the last few years. And talking with them, it's on the basis of whether they feel as though you can compete in the professional field and whether your results show that there's been some progression and that they think that that's the case. So was able to put my case forward, and with that, then they've granted me the professional license. So yeah, I was really stoked. There's always in the back of your mind thinking, have I done enough? So when I did put it in and wait in a few weeks to see, you just never know whether it might come back saying, look, we need to see you do X, Y, and Z, or yeah, target a couple of different races. But in the end, I was able to get it, so I was absolutely chuffed, and I was really happy with and thankful for all the support that I got. When I put up a post on Instagram to let everyone back home know, and it's just been sort of so much love and happy and support from everyone. So it was just great to see all that, and I was able to feel it all the way from over here. So
Yeah, well, I think it's so special, knowing you only, I guess, briefly, but really seeing your journey, and like it's blue-blooded, blue collar. It's like
mm,
you've done the work. You didn't get raised in the AIS, or you've literally done it the hard way. You've worked your way there, and I think that's why it's so inspiring. I think one question I just have, because I know on that like discretionary where you can apply, they say they want to see you perform in multiple like different distances.
mm.
And you like when was the last 70.3 you did, or like yeah, like, or are you just so flipping good now at Ironmans they're just like we can't not grant you your professional license like
I've only done two Ironman races this year. The last 70.3 was last year. I did Nottingham Outlaw. Oh yeah, I think it was mid last year. So I put all those results forward. So it must have just been the combination of all of them. That
what was
yeah, they must have.
what was your 70.3 results?
I think in that race might have been fifth overall and 4:05. So yeah, I was really happy with that and prior to that, I'm just thinking I always target obviously the full distance more so, but the last time might have been, we're thinking back to Oz, maybe a husky or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So I haven't done too many, um, just because I always like targeting the longer races, and I find that because I want to there's travel associated with it. I sort of find that I just wait until those big ones, and then we'll target them.
So tell me also just because I want to live through you vicariously. So like they just emailed you and one day you just opened the email and it was like you're a professional triathlete, or like yeah.
Yeah, I went through the whole process of registering just as a trialist member, and then they've got a portal there that you can then put in your application for, and then based on that, then they'll review it. So from there, then a few weeks later, I just followed up with an email just saying, how was this? And they said it was granted, and that was it. So yeah, it was great to open up that email and get that. I was really stoked.
Did you go out to dinner, or like what was there a celebration or
A couple celebratory wines on the weekend because it only happened last week. So watching the Ironman World Champs over in Kona, a couple of red wines, not too much training on the Sunday. Then that was it was all it was pretty good.
That's awesome. All right, let's jump into Ironman Italy. So we're 6 weeks ago. I know that I think we briefly chatted, and you said that you like blew up a little on the run, or you started cramping on the run. So even with that, you like even though you won, you still thought like you had more to give. So can you tell me like how did the race go? How did it go for you? And give me some,
Yeah,
also, obviously, we always chat about the bike because we love the bike, but like, yeah, tell us power numbers, go.
yeah, absolutely. So overall, I think it was one of my toughest races. Wasn't my greatest performance, but mentally, I was able to push through to the end, and it got really tough at certain times. I'll go into why, but when we were going over there, Italy actually had a few days of intense rain and intense flood. I think they got 3 months worth of rain within a couple of days. So a lot of the areas were actually well underwater and flooded. We were really fortunate that the rain cleared, and then the areas where we were riding were actually really dry. So that worked out really well, but I was quite nervous there in terms of whether they're going to have to modify the course, or even with the swim. With that amount of rain, you get nervous that it's going to be a pretty dirty swim, and then that might affect. So leading in, it wasn't the greatest in terms of prep, not being able to ride as much because of the rain, sort of avoid heading out if it's wet the few days before, just so that way bike tires and all that stay clean. And same with swimming in the ocean, I avoid that especially if there's been some rain around, because I've had a little bit of illness before where I've done that. So just erring on the side of caution there. But race day, it was all good. I felt really good leading in, and race morning, I put myself up towards the front of the swim, something I hadn't done in the past. But I think I was second row back, and plan was to go out, take it out. I felt my swim training had progressed, and I was in some really good form. Seen some great numbers in the pool, and then wanted to sit onto some people's feet and try to conserve as much, and I was able to do that. So there was a good, strong current on the way out, and then on the way back, we sort of came back into it a little bit, so it was a touch slower. But I was able to sit on a couple of sets of feet. There was probably a group of about 3 of us. I did no work, which was great, and went around that final buoy, and pace picked up a little bit, and that's where I decided to just conserve a touch and wait for someone else to sort of come past, and then would be able to jump onto the back of them. But I was sort of in no man's land, and ultimately I should have just pushed that little bit more. I think I did have it in me. I was just trying to be a bit more conservative, knowing it was a long day. But yeah, I had a PB swim there,
What was
53
the
minutes.
time? Yep.
I think it was 53, high 53s. And I think those guys who went out ahead of me, where I dropped them probably around the 2K mark or so, they might have just come under 53. So I ended up bleeding a little bit of time that last sort of kilometre or so, which is unfortunate, but was able to get out of the water still in a good position. My transitions always are very quick. I have everything set up on the bike and ready to go. It was a long transition again. I think it ended up taking me about 4 minutes, and I'm running quite hard through that whole thing. So I think it might have been close to 800 meters long, similar to Hamburg. One of those ones where they just have the bikes lined up all the way along the beach. So it's just a long straight. They don't have much space or sort of width. And unfortunately, I think I got to the check-in quite early, thinking I was going to get a primo location, but I actually had the worst bike spot, so I had to run through the whole transition with my bike as well. So just one of those things, but at least it was quite clear. I think because I started up the front, I think there was only about 4 or 5 people ahead of me coming into transition. So jumped on the bike. I think I was 5th onto the bike. I think my swim was about 15th overall or something like that. So I was really happy with that. And then I started to get to work, and my plan, as much as my own coach said, you want to conserve and put together a really good race. I wanted to get to the front of the race and race it again. And I took it out hard, and I thought that I could make up the gap in that first sort of 40 kilometres out to a highway. We're going from sort of the ocean up to the highway, and then you're going along the highway, back down, out along some of the towns, and then back along the highway. So I thought I could make the gap up in about 40k, and I did really well. I actually overtook the 4 guys, the 3 guys in front of me in the first, say, 20 kilometres or something like that.
Question 1, power output.
Yeah.
So what did you take out at?
Yeah, so always during town, it's a bit lower, but as expected, you're going around corners and things. But that block where I was on the straights and that, I was actually holding around about 290 watts. So thought that I'd be able to make up that gap, and once I hit to the front, then could bring it back. And also I looked into a couple of things like wind, and I knew there was a big headwind on the way out, so I thought I could make up that gap there, and then knowing on the back way I could conserve. So got to sort of the highway there, and then saw that there was one guy ahead of me, and looked, and he was about a minute and a half, and I thought, okay, great, I can make that minute and a half up. But actually ended up taking me probably until about 110k to make that up. But my power numbers heading into the first 90k, I think in the end it was 200, and I did have a little look. I think it ended up being about 285 watts for the first sort of 90 kilometres. And then on that second lap, that's where I started to get a lot more congestion on the course, with a lot of cyclists, riders. So ended up dropping the power back a little bit, and and then made the pass. I think one of the big issues is the way that the aid stations were set up. I missed too many bottles, so my nutrition was on point, but I just missed too many bottles, and the weather temp was around 20 degrees to 25 degrees, so not super hot, but it was just direct sunlight, no cloud cover, and it was pretty windy as well. So I just ended up, I was sweating a lot, and at a couple of the aid stations, missed bottles dropped out. Where they were set up was on cobbles, and ended up missing a lot. So I think I wasn't able to grab a bottle until, what's that one, to the third aid station, which was close to 80k in, and then ended up taking one there, dropping another one,
Ooh.
and then the next aid station was able to grab one but missed another one, and then the following one, and that was probably around about 140, I ended up not being able to grab any just because of the cobbles, the way that all the athletes were. It was just congested. So I ended up actually starting to cramp around 120k into the bike. So that's where I knew, just based on my power, my heart rate, that there was a big dehydration factor there. And I planned on at that aid station where the cobbles were to grab 2-3 bottles and drink a lot, but just with the safety aspect, I just couldn't. So that really started to play on me, and after I overtook the Daniel, who ended up coming second in the race, he and I were together for quite some time after that point, up until back to the highway. There's a little sort of region where we're doing a big loop. So it was during that section. We weren't working together, but we were together. And after that, I sort of put in a dig and broke away. But ultimately, I started cramping again. So I'd be sort of holding, around 260 watts, and then all of a sudden, both my quads would go. I'd have to stand up, try and ease them out. It was quite intense for that last sort of 40k.
Um, so obviously my mind goes to I would be panicking. That's bad. Like in my mind would be going, I'm at the front of the race and I've still got like 40k to go or 60k to go, and then I have a marathon to go. So how much fluid do you think you ended up what was your like fluid, electrolyte, carb consumption? Do you think you actually ended up consuming on the ride roughly?
Yeah, so I think in terms of carbs, I was able to take on everything that I had planned. I think I missed, again, because of the aid stations, I think I missed a couple of gels, but ultimately I ended up taking on about 115 grams per hour. On the bike, in terms of the fluid, I calculated after, and I think I probably missed out on about 3.5 litres, because I would have taken a bottle or two over that time. The last aid station, I tried to make up for it. I grabbed 3 bottles. So then I drank 1.5 litres, within the next sort of 10 kilometres or 20 kilometres. And at that stage, you're just feeling so sick. So at the start of the run, I was feeling quite sick. So electrolyte wise, I try to replace around about 50% now, instead of going high. I've done higher in the past and found that my stomach gets quite upset from it. So I find that for me now, that's sort of how, that's a good amount. So I
So
don't think there was
how
actual ones.
how did you do that? Did you have tabs or did you just take on course electrolyte or
I mix up a big concentrated mix into my aero bottle. So in that, I probably have around about 300 grams of carbs. I also have, it would be, close to maybe 4,000 milligrams of sodium. And that way I sip that. The plan is to sip that and then take on course water to help wash it down. It was quite, I ended up getting a lot of stomach upset later in the race and things like that, obviously from just not having enough fluids on board and whatnot. But I think I was able to take on enough during, but it was just the hydration to help out with all that.
so we come into T2 and what was your gap? Do you know?
Yeah, so I came into C2, I think it was a couple of minutes. So the last 40k was very quick coming into town. Obviously, I was cramping, but the speed I was able to hold was actually really quite high just because we had a tailwind. So that was a real positive. My power numbers across the whole bike ended up dropping off quite significantly, but that's when you're soft pedaling. It's quite tough. So I came into T2 with about 2 minute lead, and what I wanted to do was take it out hot again and try to put in a bit of a gap and see if I can then hold on. And as much as, in my head, I was saying, oh, I'm cramping, I should take it out easy. I thought back to Hamburg where I probably should have taken it out a bit hotter and closed the gap. So I took it out at around, I was holding sort of 350 base, which was what I should have, what I've been training for and I was feeling good for. so 350 per kilometre, and I just, in the guts straight away, I was feeling sick, just a lot of fluid, just because I drank so much. But at that point, I said, I need to make sure I'm hydrating every aid station, getting in electrolyte mix, water, and then also making sure I'm on top of my nutrition and gels. And the plan there was to take 80 grams of carbs per hour. So looking at 3 gels, and then whatever else I did have with me. My mistake there is I probably should have taken my soft flask. I've ran with a soft flask in the past. And this race, I had it in my T1, I had in my bag for the morning to put in my T2 bag just in case. And I should have probably grabbed that, because then that would have allowed me in between aid stations to fill up, keep sipping, and try and get some balance back in with the hydration. But, these hindsight things. So I ended up taking it out fast, and I think at a kilometre in, I thought, geez, my quads are quite tight. So I tried to stretch, and that was a big mistake, and both quads locked up straight away. And it took me probably another sort of 15 seconds there to start running again. I thought, look, I just can't stop, because if I stop, it's going to lock up. So the first sort of 10K, I think I took out in, I think it was about 350 pace, looking at my numbers. And then I had a big full lock up at around 14 kilometres, and I got sort of the call that the guy was around about 3 minutes. So I was putting some time into him, but I thought at that point where I had to stop completely for, it would have been about 2 minutes there. That kilometre was about 6 minute kilometre. I thought for sure he was going to come, but I looked around and there was no one behind me. So I think ultimately he was starting to fade as well, because he took it out quite hot, trying to probably bridge the gap, and it might have put a bit into his legs.
So I want to just quickly jump into your mind, right? So
Mm.
you're winning. You've cramped a couple times pretty significantly. Surely, like, there's got to be some doubt starting to play in your mind. Like, I always think as well, like being chased. Like, in my opinion, I would rather be the chaser than be chased. Like, there's just something in my mind about, like, I feel like that self-doubt creeps in a bit quicker when you're the one being chased. Like, tell me, like, what's going through your mind? How are you staying positive? Like, I mean, you're obviously winning, so clearly, like, there's some amp, you're beating your chest a little bit maybe, but like, how did you cope knowing, dealing with the cramp, knowing someone's coming for you? Yeah.
I think I've been in this situation before. My first couple of Ironmans, I cramped the whole marathon, so I knew that I'd be able to get through. It's a very different feeling, sort of being chased versus doing the chasing. There is always that thing in the back of your mind going, oh shit, he might be just around the corner there and be able to come streaming past. But from memory, in that moment, I think I was just always super positive, knowing that I felt that it was my race and that I'd be able to hold it together. And if I can just get back moving, then I'd be able to hold and, just hope that he was able to, or he was starting to fade as well, or that the rest of the field was starting to fade. So I think I just remained super positive, and then you've got the crowd who are really amping you up, so you're able to build off that as well. And I was just thinking, just be consistent and tick them over and keep getting nutrition in, keep getting hydration in, and it all come together. So my pace ended up slowing quite a lot. Those in that sort of 15 to the next sort of 30K, I was ending up holding then about 4:15 pace, and I knew that if I was holding 4:15 pace, then I'm still doing quite well. But it was at that point then I started to really lock up. So I think up until probably around about the 30K mark, I was super positive, and then the K started to really drop off. But I did get a time split that I was around 5 to 6 minutes up. So, running the quick math, I was like, if I just keep moving, then essentially, he would have to run close to, 15, 20 seconds into me each kilometre, which is probably a big ask towards the back end, given the heat and how hot it was. So, I did remain super positive, and then coming into sort of the third lap was tough. I was still able to hold it together, but again started to lock up a couple of times where I had to completely walk. And then that last lap was, honestly a death march. It was tough. So I remember going past my support crew. I had an amazing support crew there, family, friends, and they were just awesome. remember hugging my wife, just going, I can do anything for the next 10K. And she ended up giving me a slap on the butt, and my glute ended up cramping. So I was like, oh no, this is going to be tough.
Wait,
Actually, the
from
other
the
thing
start.
from the slap, yeah, I was in absolutely all sorts. So, and then that last 10K was tough. You know, I was looking at my running file. My cadence remained the same. So my cadence was at 185 to 190, but I was just going slower and slower. So I was just shortening my stride more and more to stop the cramps, because I was in one of those um, those points where if I sped up, a cramp would grab, and if I started to walk, a cramp would grab. So I just literally had to just go at this slow snail pace and still run in 5 minute per kilometers, but it doesn't feel like you're running at that point. Um, so yeah, that last 10K I was running scared. And I think that was when sort of the negative thoughts came in, going, shit, I'm going to choke here. And I followed the Giants, and we'd watched them absolutely choke the 2 weeks in a row, and I thought, oh shit, I'm going to choke like the Giants here. But I was able to hold it together, which was good. But that last sort of 5K, there's a turnaround and coming back. That was tough. You know, I had a lot of support from the other athletes. They were cheering me on, and there was people running with me as well, which was just awesome. Just the whole community there was great. But it was a battle, and you
So
go.
you did you cross paths with the guy coming behind you? Like
Yeah,
yeah. So tell me, like, were you all of a sudden, let's go, like I gotta speed up and look good, or like like, yeah, like was there any mind games?
I think ultimately you always both put on a little bit of a, push your chest out and put on a bit of a smile. I'm always super encouraging on course to everyone, second, third, fourth. I yell out to everyone, give them high fives. If we do cross paths, I think that takes some people back, and sometimes you get them back, sometimes you don't. But the first two laps, we were, quite close. It was only, 2, 3 minutes. So you'd come around and turn around, we'd high five, and I'd yell out. I think Daniel, he might be Austrian, so he probably couldn't understand me. And then same with a couple of the other athletes who were, looking good, or third, fourth. I'd yell out to them, high five them if we were close, and things like that, and they'd give me the support on the other end. So that was really good to see. But towards the last bit, I don't think we crossed paths. So that's where, on that last lap, so that's where I knew I had a pretty solid gap, and I was able to come. But that wasn't until probably that last 5K, and then even then I was still thinking, shit, someone's going to run past me here, and I've got nothing to do. I can't even run quicker than 5 minutes. So yeah, and then coming into the final little bit, just the crowd was electric. Everyone was yelling. My only regret from the whole race was I was in such a world of hurt and trying to get to the finish line. I was gritting my teeth, still had a smile on my face, or it might have been like a grimace, but I wish I could have embraced the crowd, but it was more just the mindset of, I need to get this done because, I'm struggling here. But I think the crowd could read off that, and they could see I was hurting. So that made them cheer louder. And then coming into, I think it was probably it probably wasn't until the last K that I realised I've got this. And that's where I just wanted to get to that finish line shoot. And coming down, it was just, the best thing. They had the music timed, and because there was no pro field, I was the first across the line, and I think everyone spectating, they must have thought I was the first professional across the line. But they were awesome. There was phones everywhere. I've never seen a finishing line like that. There was just hundreds of people. They were just clapping, yelling. And I got down that finishing line shoot and saw my wife and gave her a hug, and a kiss, and then was able to grab the banner, and it was just awesome. All happened so quick, and I wish I had been able to soak it in. But straight after, I just went to the side and laid on down, and I didn't want to get up for about a minute or two, and then I was able to sort of go and clap the crowd and thank everyone. And I think the mayor of the city was there, so he was hugging me, and I was just a ball of sweat and salt, and
And
that was just so awesome.
that's yeah, that's just epic to hear, and yeah, doesn't surprise me to hear you cheering second place on. You're a good man. Yeah, that is awesome to hear, and an awesome picture to, yeah, imagine. And yeah, so happy for you, because
Thanks,
that's
mate.
an epic experience. So, and I think obviously you're in that moment. You're like 1K to go. Honestly, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is embracing the crowd. You're probably like the whole time, the last 10K, you've been worried about like you just got to get to the finish line. Like that's all you're trying to do, That's all you've probably got like two brain cells left. Like all they're trying to do is get to the end. So that sounds like a hard slogged day, pretty much from halfway through the bike. Like that was hard work. So
Yeah, I think ultimately, like in performance wise, if I had have ran what I set out to run, I would say would have been one of my best performances. But as I said, it was one of the hardest mental battles, and I'm glad that I was able to stick it out and could have crumbled at any minute, but was able to keep my mind active during the tough times and think about what I needed to do to get through. And looking back, it's the little one percenters now. I'm sort of pushing the limit of what I'm capable of, and missing, one, two, three bottles is probably detrimental, let alone, seven. So, yeah, always got to take that into consideration now. And hindsight again is a beautiful thing. So, next race, the takeaways there are when I start to notice I've missed a few bottles in a row, I've just got to be at an aid station prepared to slow and stop even to get it on. I think it is an actual crime that Ironman have those plastic water bottles that don't fit in your cage though. So as much as I did a homemade like job with some of the shoe elastic laces to then hold the bottles in place, they just don't fit. So unfortunately, I think even in that, and this is what some people can take away, even should have just grabbed a bottle at each aid station, drank 500, 600 mils straight away, and then tossed the bottle. So that way, at least you're getting half a litre in, and you can probably tolerate half a litre a lot more, but 1.5 litres over a short period of time is tough.
Yeah, I mean, just like quick note is even me during my last 70.3, I didn't want to stop to like even like I have a little refillable aero bottle now on the front that holds 800 mil, but like I didn't obviously a 70.3 is way more like time, like everything, every second counts over nutrition, and I didn't want to stop and even have to try and worry about refilling it. So like my coach was like, just grab one and just get as much in as you can and throw it out before the
Yeah.
ad station ends. And I think that's definitely like something that I don't know. I will incorporate in my next race, but also like a good thing moving forward to know that you can just grab one and you can get like 300-400 mil in. You can get a
Yeah.
lot in really quick and then throw it out. So, um, epic. All right, let's now, because we've heard how epic that was, let's jump back. So, Hamburg, what month was Hamburg? July, is that right?
Hamburg was June, early June.
Yeah.
I think it might have been the second. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you've got July, August. You've only got what was it, 2.5, 3 months between the races?
Yeah, it ended up being about 14 weeks. So I picked another race after Hamburg where I thought it would give me enough time to both recover and then actually progress. I think a lot of the times racing 8 weeks apart, once you do have a little bit of a rest and recovery and get back into it, you probably only ever get back to where you were prior to that first race in terms of performance. So I wanted to give myself enough gap to then make some progress within the year and see some change in the numbers. So 14 weeks was what the difference was. So 2 weeks after I had pretty much, I always do this, 2 weeks of complete rest, 1 week of complete rest, and then a second week of just doing what the body feels. And typically it's not much, sort of
Great.
go
So,
into work and get moving again.
so you had 1 week, not nothing. Is that right?
Yeah, so same with after Hamburg. I was with family, so we spent a few days there, and then getting back into work. It just ends up being a lot because you've had that bit of time off. So end up that week's just manic by the time you get back and go. So yeah, more mentally, it's rather than physically, you need the rest.
I mean, I think that is a great takeaway and a great advocate for rest. Uh,
Mm.
I think, well, clearly you're one of the best Ironman athlete at the moment you're in the top, what, 0.4% in the world or something, roughly. That's my guesstimate. So like to not hear that you're taking a week off, like, that's people should take that on board. I think particularly, you're talking about, I think to me, that sounds like not much time between two big Ironmen. Like, as someone that has never finished an Ironman, I
Mm,
hear people talk about like that fatigue being so ongoing. And even when I Roth last year, I just did the swim and the ride because I was injured. But I even now look back and see like how like we then did some traveling. We went to Berlin and around Europe, and like I was knackered for like a week. Like I was just so sleepy
mm.
all the time. And I think about that, and I only did the swim and the ride. I didn't actually do the run. So like, yeah, I do imagine like that in like that long term, like you get a lot of long term fatigue. It's not like 2 nights good sleep and you're good to go. So it is interesting how like yeah, just a week off to mentally switch off, physically switch off, and then your second week of just seeing what you want to do and how the body feels. I think that's good because if you're going to, it's a different approach because one thing I've learned recently with my coach is after I did my last 70.3 like 6 weeks ago, he actually gave me like, oh, it was still structured training because it's only a 70.3, but like, yeah, I had like 1.5 weeks of pretty reduced training. And I have never, ever done that in my life. My previous coach, which if you know about me, he was, he blew me up. It was a bit of overtraining. It's a long story, but he was also still a great coach. But his approach was like, I would go to a swim after the 70.3. I'd go to the pool, do more training, wake up the next day, like we're back to flat out training. Like I never had that rest. So I'm interested because there's
Yep.
benefit to doing the Ironman, resting properly, and then getting back into the proper training.
It's quite interesting. It's like clockwork. 4 weeks post any Ironman for me, I see my HRV numbers return back to normal. So 2 weeks of rest, 2 weeks of just building back up, and in that time, I might have a little bit of intensity just from swim squad. But then and then I start to build after that. So yeah, I always find 4 weeks is what I need for my body. I feel fine, feel like I can train, but just looking at those HRV numbers, I know it takes a little bit more sort of centrally to fully recover there.
Yeah. So let's right now, let's touch on your work. Tell me about how much you worked during that period. And you're a physio, just for people, but yeah, what does work look like and how much training volume are you doing? And how do you manage your wife and a life? And yeah,
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate. I was able to reduce my hours, and I was able to reduce them just before Hamburg, going from down to 3 days. So again, having another half, it's helped a lot, and that support there. Been very tough living in London, single, and doing this sport, and then trying to work alongside it, and so I was able to do that. So as much as that happened just before Hamburg, it was only a couple of weeks, so there was no real benefit there. But the big benefit came here, and dropping down to 3 days. As much as it gave me more time, my training actually didn't jump up substantially. It just gave me more ability to recover. So leading in, my training volume probably bumped up an extra hour to maybe 2 hours per week compared to my previous builds. But my big weeks, I would look at be doing around 24 hours. I think I did that 2 or 3 times across that period. The majority was sitting in between 20 to 24 hours, just depending on how busy work and that is. And my work is really busy, so as much as you condense it down to 3 days, or you go to 3 days, 3 days becomes jam packed because you have all those patients that you had for the full week into that amount of time. So mentally, it's a lot at work, and you just got to take that on board. And sometimes there's days where I wake up and I'm absolutely fried, and I've just got to respect that and take that into consideration. So I think every year and every build, I've been able to add on a little bit more of volume rather than making these big substantial jumps. And I think that's what's then allowed me to progress, but also recover from the training and know that my body is able to cope with it, stay more injury free. And this year I've been able to stay more injury free as well. So yeah, again, I'm with my work, super fortunate that I can sometimes run into work. I've been able to change my hours to work with both swim squad at night as well as be able to run in or run home. Those little bits where I'm not having to commute just make it so much easier because I'm doing a training session or easy run on the way in or the way home. So it just makes it so seamless. And that way it gives me a lot of time outside to stay on top of my own stuff, my own training, my own coaching, but also social side is, being able to get the work done and then still hang out with friends and that here. Something's always got to give, but I find that I've got a really good balance at the moment where I'm able to have my fingers in all the little pies, but and feel like I'm getting a little bit out of each, but not overdoing it.
Um, sorry, a bit of water just went down the wrong way. Um, Now I have a question or curious here because look, I'm today I made a different YouTube video just for anyone that's interested, but I was literally only just talking to the other camera about how I am really bad at, well, I'm young. Life is expensive. This sport is insanely
Yeah,
expensive. Like my insurance on my bikes, it's insane. They've just gone up. Like they want me to pay, it's like $1,300 for the year just for general insurance. But this year they've now changed it so they don't cover racing. So you have to pay an extra $1,600 to get covered while racing.
yeah.
And just like,
Try converting that to pounds, and then
yeah.
and then you realise,
So like life is expensive. We all know that. So I am at the point where the last couple of weeks I have been working like too much. Like it's been 7 days a week mostly, but some of those days are like only 3 hour days and stuff. But like I'm working over full-time hours because as well, like my bosses always call me up and they go, there's a last minute, like I'm a disability support care worker. So there's often like last minute shifts or something, someone calls in sick and I'm usually the go-to person because I don't know how to say no as well. Um, and I've really found that has affected me uh, it's a like I can always do like a week or so where I can manage like hectic life, like where you just wake up, you go, and you go to bed, you inhale some food, you get like 5, 6 hours sleep, and I can go again. And I can do that usually for a week. And then it starts to I become irritable, and I have a partner, Ruby, and she bears the brunt of that. And like I get home and it's like a kiss on the cheek, and it's like, oh, like I'm inhaling food and I'm going to bed, like, and then I'll see you in like 3 days. I don't know. And for me, I suck at I'm good at like I can listen to what you say, but I struggle to implement that. So my question, what I'm getting to here is, how do you make that decision to be so confident to go, I'm only going to work 3 days a week and I'm pursuing this? Like, how do you get to that point where you feel confident? Even for me, I think about like my partner's family. Like I have people that don't understand this sport. They don't understand what I do. They don't think I can. I mean, I've had countless people tell me it's you can't make a career out of it, or so how do you cross that bridge to then go, I'm only going to work 3 days a week?
I'm sure, and I'm sure a lot of people look back on the last sort of 8 years since I got into this sport and probably thought the exact same. Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? And early days, I was doing the exact same thing, working 7 days, 6 days, and I've always been, we've always been smart in terms of financially not living without outside our means, and same with the in the sport. I don't buy the latest upgrades. My wetsuit's 7 years old. All these little things where I mix my own nutrition, all these little things to help out to then make sure that we can. But all these little things, have built up over the years to the point where I know now, we can support ourselves on the wage that we do get. So it took a long time to get to this point, but we are finally here, and that's why it made sense to make the jump up, because everything is in place and it's working out, and we're able to live in London and make it work. But it is always a tricky thing, and I look back and there's probably been many mistakes that I've made along the way. Doing too much and trying to do the training and things like that. So really, it comes with time, and it comes with learning, and again, you just have to be on top of all those, or try to be on top of all those little things to make it work, and have someone who's supportive and able to pick up here and there as well, to take the load when times are tough. And just know that it might be a 2 week period, and you've just got to put your eggs in that basket. And as an amateur, I've always thought I get paid to work, so that's where I need to have the focus. If I'm not able to focus at work and give my all there for what I'm getting paid for, then it's probably a bit too much. And until you can make money from it, that's the way it's got to be. So probably taking that stance and not being disgruntled. Again, you always look back, and in the moment I am disgruntled if I can't train and things like that, but then after, you look back and go, actually no, that was the right thing. So being okay with going, what, I've had a lot of work this week and I won't be able to train. And I remember listening to a podcast once, and they were saying, and I've said this to a couple of other athletes in the past, what someone can realistically do is essentially 50 hours within a week, or might be a bit more, 55 hours. So if your work week's 38, then really 17 hours is what you'd be able to do. If you're working a little bit more, then it's going to be a little bit less. Everyone is different, but that's just a rule of thumb, and I think it does ring true for a number of different people, that if the bucket fills somewhere, you've just got to pull it out of somewhere else.
Yeah, so well said. And I think
I didn't really give you any key
no,
take homes or points, but just know that it will get there. You want it to happen overnight, but in this sport, nothing ever does. It takes time. You just got to be confident with that. But small changes over a long period of time end up making big ones, and then you look back in 12 months and go, hey, actually, now we've got the right mix and it's working, and got the right amount of work hours, making the money I need to. I'm sleeping, recovering, and able to train.
yeah, that's so again, I just brush over the facts, because the key takeaway that again I get from talking with you is firstly, you're incredibly humble, and I think yet you have a lot of inner self-confidence, and I think taking rest, and saying, maybe I need to do this session easier, or that really like comes from a place of confidence. And I think you've always demonstrated a real long-term growth approach to, you've focused on not doing things overnight, but actually let's do them in 2 years, and let's get to that 2 year point, and let's still be healthy and still be keen on the sport. And I think that's such a key takeaway, because this is a long-term sport. And so you can burn yourself out, you can get injured, you can run out of money or burn a
Yeah,
relationship if you don't approach it with some sort of balance.
yeah,
Yeah. So really appreciate that. I do have one more question actually for you. And so this is, I was going through your Instagram and I read a comment where someone said that you didn't take your world champ slot. And you wrote, I love to travel in new locations throughout the year. So I think that's another thing we've kind of brushed on, is like your love of travel, like, and how well that works with the sport. So does that mean you're not going to do a world championship race, or like you didn't want to do age group world championship because you knew you were applying to be a pro, or like, yeah, what's
Yeah, I'd already booked Italy prior to Hamburg as well. I had family, my family from across the states. Were coming across for that trip. My parents come across for Hamburg, so we booked these events well in advance. And I think the big thing with the championships, like I watching it, I'd love to be there and actually duke it out with everyone. It would have been awesome, but just the travel, the commitment, that's where the financial side comes into it. You know, that's a big chunk there. And looking at it, you know, my two races and all the travel would probably come to half of what it would cost me to go to Kona, not to mention the annual leave side. So just have to take all those into consideration. And I was there 2 years and it was an awesome race and love to get there back there one day. But yeah, one of the main reasons why we moved across to Europe was to continue to see the world, and that's what we've found with my racing. We're able to do so. The races that I choose aren't what are going to suit me. It's have we been to that place? And then that probably is, you know, for next year, looking at where I might be, I want to try and get across to Texas. I don't know with the Pro Series in terms of start lists, whether that will limit me being just newly in the professional field. They might have some sort of restrictions, but love to go there and see Texas. I haven't been there. So, and have all my American family come across and see, and then potentially somewhere like a Copenhagen or Switzerland later in the year. And
Yeah.
then also, I think as much as I haven't done any 70.3s, I'd love to, you know, next year look to do some across Europe, maybe do a bit of a training camp. I was able to head to Girona for a good 10-day block this year and maybe link up a bit of a training camp with a race and do some more travel that way as well. So, yeah, I think I'm always going to try and stay true to why I do it and who I am with this. And I think that's probably the best way to be, because then there's not going to be, you know, a huge amount of expectation on me. Again, I see this as a hobby, and as much as I'm going to give it, you know, 110% and do everything in my power to continue to progress and challenge in races, I still do it for fun, and you know, I want that to be the main reason behind it over the next, you know, few years.
Well said. So they're the races you're thinking of: Texas, Copenhagen, and what was it, like Switzerland? I
Or
mentioned.
Switzerland, they're all around the same time. So, yeah, I think things now can change quite quickly. So we'll see, and plans might change, but I think they're going to be the places I'd like to go and check out because I haven't been to any of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're big races. They're big races, though. You know, like a lot of newly pro triathletes would target some lesser races. You don't care. That's not a thought process. It's just,
No, again, yeah, I want to do it because I enjoy doing it as much as, yeah, again, I'm very realistic in terms of thinking, you know, there's potential there in 5 years to be, you know, potentially challenging if I continue to progress. But at the moment, you know, I'd just be more happy in myself to post good results and have a good race across the day. And I think that's where I need to lie my focus rather than making it, you know, all consuming for the point, well, at the point. People around me probably tell me already it's all consuming, but I feel as though it's not in my own head at the moment. And having these little things really excite me, you know, and that's why I do it.
I think that's also a good point, is you just saying, in my own head, it's not all consuming. Like that's a good place to be, like for longevity. So, and also exciting because it also means that you know you have more to give. Like you feel like so. So if you qualify for Nice, are you going to Nice or?
Oh, you'd have to. Yeah, I'd get absolutely spat out the back there, but I'd give it a good dig. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, from this point, definitely. You know, I think that's then is the ultimate goal, isn't it? As a professional, would be potentially getting to the world stage and being one of those 50 contenders on the start line. So yeah, I wouldn't say no to something like that, and I'm sure that, you know, at that stage I'd be able to have some sort of financial backing to help me there as well. But for the moment, that was why one of the reasons why I just thought Kona, as much as I loved it and it would have been awesome, it was just too challenging and probably just too much for us to get across there.
I think that's another thing, is I was only just touching on this with someone else, is is like the expense for I don't know particular, it might be better for some people in other parts of the world, but also just the economy and everything when you're there. Like I've
Mm,
heard ridiculous prices for what people
yeah,
pay to go. And honestly, for me, like when they first came out that they were moving it, I was a bit like, oh no. And honestly, like 2 days later, I was like, yes, yes. Like I am a fan of, well, I love Nice, for example. Like I did my first 70.3 world champs there in 2019, and I was back again last year. And for example, if I'm lucky enough to qualify next year, I would definitely take the chance to go
yeah.
do the age group Ironman world champs. And I love the idea of moving it around because, yeah, again, I don't think like again maybe in 2 years time I'm earning a bajillion dollars, but like I don't know how anyone can afford to go to Kona, like unless you're going and you're winning, like. But even if you're an age group and even if you win your age group, you're not getting money from it, like unless that you get some massive sponsorship deals from it. So yeah, it's a big cost and something I feel like that's often brushed over. So yeah.
Yeah, it can be challenging for a lot, but when you are in Kona, you realise just how amazing it is. I think my personal opinion is bring it back to one day, and put
Yeah.
both men and women on the island because it is just awesome, and there's just something different about it. I've done another a number of other races that are scenic and really beautiful, and I tell lots of people to go, but there's just something about that island that is really awesome. So when you get there,
Yeah.
you'll fully understand, but it is such a commitment. So yeah, it'd be great if they could find a way to make it a little bit easier for everyone,
And
but unfortunately that's the way. And that's yeah, that's it. That's why I guess a lot of potentially younger athletes find it really hard to get across, but maybe more middle-aged athletes where their kids are a little bit older and they've reached their peak in their careers, they're able to afford and put that money, and they've got a bit more disposable income. But yeah, it is unfortunate. It is one of those things.
yeah, I mean, maybe I'll land, maybe one day, if when I go, I'll land on the plane and I'll go, oh, that's why. Like, yeah,
You'll know from the week and then from the race. Just yeah.
but I've even also heard, like, and read lots of things about the locals don't even want you there. Like, so, like, even in one of Lionel's vlogs, like, they wouldn't let him swim in the pool in the resort he was staying at because they didn't want him there. Like, and he's paid and he's like, yeah. So, how is that an enjoyable experience when the people don't want you there? Like,
Yeah, I think it's like everywhere you go. There's a small minority that don't want the race to be there, and typically they make it harder for people. And at every race I've been at, there's probably going to be locals around who are a bit disgruntled that their Sunday drive or walk is being disrupted, and they're the small percentage. And it's not everyone. I think there was a challenge race this year as well that it got cancelled because the locals had pulled the road barriers out, and
oh,
they couldn't. Yeah, the police couldn't clear the road. So you're always going to get those small amounts, and it's unfortunate there are small amounts, but it's not the main population. Everyone there is just so loving. They're loving. They're Hawaiian, so there's not a bad bone in their body, but there's always just the small ones that it disrupts their week, and rather than seeing the positive effect it has, they see the negative on them and the small inconvenience it is. So that's all it is. Again, you can always like look at these little these bits which make it frustrating for athletes and sometimes dangerous when riding and things like that. But if you look at the big community, and it is really good.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I put it in perspective, here it's Melbourne 70.3 next
Oh
weekend.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tradies could have it their way, they'd be bloody trying to ram everyone off the road. So
There might be a
honestly, like,
couple of screws on the going
yeah,
along along the road.
honestly, like I've done probably 90% of my riding on the trainer, and even then, like, so now I live in the eastern suburbs here in Melbourne, and every time I ride outdoors, I now drive to literally the last, like, I think 4 rides that I've done outside. I drive to Beach Road, which is 2 lanes. It's by far the safest place to ride in Melbourne. And there's this section between Black Rock and Mentone it's actually only 10 kilometers long. And I've literally just done laps up and down that because it's like the safest part of the road. And I barely dare, unless it's like early Sunday morning ride anywhere through the here, because it's just honestly I've had, even like up in the Dandenongs and stuff, for Victorians they know, like I've had that many genuine near death experiences of people. They could wait point one of a second, like, and be slightly patient, and but no, instead they're happy to risk your life. And it's just like, I just don't need that anymore. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted of nearly dying. So yeah, the Zwift is I'm leveling up quick.
Yeah. One thing with outdoor riding in here, it is really quite challenging. I go out to a place called Drift Road, but it takes me 90 minutes to get out there to do my longer efforts, and it's a 15k out and back. So we do laps of that, and that's probably the safest. But even there, there's trucks and that. And what I always think when I am riding, especially outdoors, you sacrifice that little bit of intensity for the safety. It just you have to. And it's not getting disgruntled if you're supposed to hold 290 watts and you hold 275 because you had to freewheel behind a car. Same with coming up to roundabouts and that. Like, I'm always out of the drops, always tap the brakes, and I just always think that car hasn't seen me, because most of the time they don't, and that's saved me a lot of times in terms of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I'd be the same on every ride. I'd get instances where if I was being stupid and wasn't paying attention, I'd be hit or something like that. So safety is always the number one priority, which is unfortunate. You'd wish that it would be like some of these amazing European towns and countrysides where they're really conducive for cycling, and they'll give you a gap and they'll go around. There's no rush, but unfortunately where we live, it's quite busy all the time, and everyone's in a mad rush to get wherever they are.
Yeah, indeed. And I think another thing is, like, I've also really, really found now, I have been spending so much time on the trainer, is um, the trainer, a key factor the trainer reduces is just worrying about cars pulling out, avoiding potholes. Like that is 5-10 watts. Like the all you have to do is worry about the power. It you can actually get more out of a session, I
Yeah,
find. But then again, like, as I've been getting a bit more in race prep, in preparation for a race, I think you cannot exactly simulate race feeling, race effort
yeah,
on the trainer compared to real life. There's definitely something there that you're missing if you're doing all your final race preparation. I think you can translate training to road, and that's good to have that transition before a race. But just jumping from trainer to race day, I feel like you might miss something. Like,
I think translating that power to on the road can be quite tough, especially if you don't come from a cycling background. And I think that's where I found, and you probably find the same, holding say 300 watts on the indoor trainer feels quite comfortable. You're stable, you're safe. You're not having to think. You just put your head down and you pedal. Whereas when you're having to think, watch, maneuver, stay in the saddle, that's really where the challenge is. And you do need that for your race. I think you look at some of the big dogs, and I've thought, how have they been able to do it? Your Lionels, or there's another pro who, maybe Cody Beals, but does all his indoors. And I'm sure that they hold a much higher percentage on the indoor trainer. Maybe they can hold 350 watts, but then in a race they're holding 310, 320. So they have to probably then drop their power to be able to ride safely and consistent on the road. But it is a big challenge. To then try and translate across. That's what I find anyway.
Definitely. I won't drag this out too long because I know I could keep and keep and keep talking. But for everyone that's been listening, thank you so much. I hope that you, like I have, gotten so much out of this. And make sure, if you're not already, go follow Chris on Instagram and stay tuned, because we'll probably, as whatever race Chris, he'll probably win Ironman Texas next year, for all we know at this. So we'll probably do an interview after this. Stuff Bob Babbitt, and this is where it started. So yeah, thank you all for watching.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on again, and thanks for all the support to everyone out there as well. And yeah, look forward to what 2025 will bring.